Okay, Eric, could we have a roll call?
Mary Jane Brady,
Present.
Terry Kearney, Al Fivehouse, Eric Wagner present, Leanne Charlot,
Present.
Mark Berry, Susan Ryder.
Present.
Okay, since we have 4 board members present, we do have a quorum, so we can go ahead and have our meeting and conduct business this evening. So, okay. So we will move on to communications and questions from visitors. There being none, we will move on to reports. Our first report is our superintendent report from Dr. Jean Sophie.
Good evening, all. As of today, I've been on the job 3.5 weeks and have been very, very busy. The first week, I moved 18 boxes in my office of files and books, set up all my technology so that it all talks, and worked on my calendar so that it's accessible for all of the administrators and for the district office staff. As you know, the state of Illinois has mandated new teacher and principal evaluation training. It was made available the middle of June and needs to be completed by September 1st. The administrative team met most of the week of July 9th, and we're finished with our training about halfway. While it is long and sometimes tedious, we are really building inter-rater reliability and spending a lot of time talking about what good teaching and learning looks like in the classrooms, and that's very exciting. We are going to complete our training in August. I'm glad to say that today I spent the majority of the day working on my first module for principal evaluation training and have 4 modules and 5 tests to go. So I will keep you updated with that. We also have been, I've been working on my interviews with board, community, parents. These interviews last about 1 hour, and the same questions are asked to all of the constituents. And I will be continuing working on those interviews and hopefully meeting with some community and parent groups as school starts, and then prepare a report to you as the board so that we can use that for our strategic planning. Last week we had a great board workshop that we're going to update everyone on when all of our board members are present. I've also met with Ben Martindale, our former interim superintendent. I met with Tim Thomas, our NSSED executive director, as well as meeting with our district legal counsel today. I am continually impressed with the quality of staff and administrators, as well as the Board of Education and all of your focus on kids. And I look forward to a very exciting month of August and staff and students returning to school. And I really look forward to meeting more of our community members and our families. And that concludes my report.
Great. Okay, the next item on our agenda is the President's report, and July being a quiet month, I don't really have anything to report except to welcome Dr. Sophie and to thank her for a great first month.
Yeah.
And a busy one, it sounds like. So, very busy. So, and then I think that we'll move on to their end-of-the-year financial report, which I believe Jane is going to help us with.
First of all, I apologize for the various versions I've sent out. The one you received today, which is the final report, page 1 just gives you a summary, and this looks much like the budget summary that I give you in August when you adopt the budget, only this now reflects the actuals, revenues, expenditures for this past year by fund. The pages following the budget summary gives you a breakdown by each fund. So if we start with the education fund, it gives you a comparison of the budget to actuals for the year. So in the education fund revenue, local revenues, we were down 1% from what was budgeted, and that really is due a lot to kindergarten registration, which I base on previous years, and the registration was down, fees collected was down. Part of that is because our new policy of accepting fee waivers and things like that. But it's not a bad thing. State is higher. We only budgeted to receive half of what we were supposed to receive for this year, and the state actually came through with 3 payments rather than just 2 out of the 4 payments in most things. So we were pleasantly surprised that the state came through. For the expense side, we were under budget in total by 1.7%. I think that's pretty good, actually. I think if you're within 2% of your budget, you're very good. not going over, but certainly staying under. We have one area, salaries, that we were slightly over budget, 1.5%. But as you know, we didn't have contract negotiations completed when the budget was done, and so budget was based on my best estimate of what would happen with negotiations. Any questions on the education fund numbers? Yes, I did. Then moving on to operation and maintenance. The only source of revenue there basically is property taxes and a little bit of rental fees, but, and a little teeny bit of interest, but primarily that's property taxes. Again, salaries and benefits a little over because we didn't have those set when the budget was adopted. Services, supplies, capital outlay, all under budget. Services and operation and maintenance, there's always contingency built in, as there is in capital outlay, because with buildings and grounds, you never know when something's going to come up. Supplies, we're really under in natural gas and electricity. Again, I built contingency in those two line items just in case something happens. And we're fortunate enough to be able to build in those contingencies. Okay, moving to debt service. This is pretty cut and dried fund. Property tax revenue is basically all we have, and the only things we pay out of here are our capital projects debt, that's our construction bonds, principal and interest, and then we also account for lease payments for our copiers out of here, although at the end of the year, those are transferred over to the education fund. Don't ask me why, that's a wonderful law that the state came up with about 3 or 4 years ago. It's just a lot more accounting for a little bit of payment. Transportation fund, again, we received more state funding than we anticipated, and that's a good thing. We did receive 3 out of 4 payments this year. Expense side, it was the first year of a new contract with Olson's, and for this particular new contract, we bid out fuel separately. So again, I built contingency in, not knowing what the fuel cost would be for this year and allowing for some spikes. For next year, I think we're going to scale that back to a more realistic number. But that's really the reason for coming in under budget.
So is the gas also in this line item that?
It is.
Okay.
Yes.
So we budgeted the, looks like the 510, and you were building in some
I built in some
cushion.
contingency because it's the first time we've done a contract where fuel was.
Right, so we had all the risk,
Yes,
right?
yes, absolutely.
We had all the upside and all the downside, and it just so happened the gas prices went the right way.
This year it was a good thing.
Right, and so that's why we see the favorability of
Absolutely.
87,000.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Yes, absolutely. IMRF, Social Security, that is all of the employer portion of IMRF, which is your support staff pension. We pay matching portion, and also the employer's matching portion for FICA and Medicare. So that's all that's paid out of this fund, and that is, again, funded completely by local property taxes. Capital projects, those are funds that have been left over from our construction project. And for this past year, a lot of that went to the renovation work at middle school last summer, some other little things we've done. So there's about $118,000 left at the end of this year. That's what we're going to use to pay for the recent work at on the chiller, the middle school. So basically, this fund is going to be spent down in fiscal year 13. And working cash is really your savings account. And so there are no expenditures from this. It is strictly to be used for when we need it to loan to the operating funds. And I made you a couple of pie charts just to kind of show you a breakdown, local, state, federal revenues, and on the expense side, just to kind of give you a visual of where the expenditures are occur. And these are all funds combined on those 2 pie charts for your information. Any questions on anything?
Jane, I did want to say that, as we discussed on the last pie chart, on the expenses, I think it's great that we are under 80% expenditures for salary and benefits. that's a goal in the state that a lot of districts have a hard time struggling with, and we are significantly below that level. So
Jean, can I just confirm my understanding that that's the 54% on salaries plus the 12% on benefits for a total of 76? And so what you're saying, or 66, my goodness, my math.
So we're
Back to grade school.
significantly under, and I have to applaud the administration and the board for your hard work on this area, because that is a very good baseline to be under. So.
Any other questions?
Jane, I didn't have a chance to talk to you beforehand, but I'm just wondering about trending a little bit. Like, are we looking like we're trending favorably on these numbers versus what you've seen in past years?
As far as expenditures?
On expenditures on the education fund?
Yeah, I think we're trending favorably, absolutely.
And it looks like the budget was 8.1 million, right, for the salaries on the education fund, and then the spend was 8.266, for a difference of 1.5 budget and actual.
Correct.
And that's not, I think we were pretty familiar with those numbers after we got the contract agreed to.
Yes.
With the union. So these are more or less the numbers that we were expecting.
Yeah, when we adopted the budget, the tentative budget in August and the final budget in September, we didn't settle the contract. I had to estimate what I
Right.
thought where we might land with final contract negotiations for teachers and everybody else, because we didn't set any support staff salaries either until we settled the contract. So I built in what I thought where we would kind of land in the budget, and we came very close.
We did. And I saw a lot of favorability elsewhere in the education fund, so that was terrific. So, for example, our benefit costs were down in 2011, 2012. And services went down 20%. The cost for services went down 20% in the education fund. Is that right? Or
Well, they didn't go down.
Oh, I'm sorry.
We were below budget.
20% below
Yes,
budget.
yes,
Right.
yeah.
Thank you for correcting me. So that shows to me, a great deal of control, because we end up 208 under budget in the education fund.
Which means your budget was
Tight.
really, yeah, it was.
Tight but under, which is
Good budget.
it's what I want to achieve at work all the time.
absolutely.
I don't want to be way under, I certainly don't want to be over,
Absolutely.
but,
Same here.
so that's interesting that we've seen some favorability in other areas that completely and then some offset the slight increase on the salaries over the budget, not over last year. Okay, thank you.
Absolutely.
Do you tend to have that much variance between the actual and the budgeted at the end of the year? Or is this somewhat,
that much?
208,000 variance is a pretty significant amount of coming in under budget.
50% variance is, for me, that's a goal. I can build a budget and we can be 15% under.
Right.
That's not a good working budget.
Right.
That's not a good working tool. So I like to be about 2%. Yeah, so I feel fortunate that we came in at 1.7 under budget, yeah. And there, I mean, we do have contingencies built in there as well.
Sure.
There are always some instances. Tuition, we're pretty close, but we never know if a child moves in district. Legal fees, something can arise that are unplanned for, things like that. So I try to build contingencies in for unknowns, and we were fortunate enough to have funding such that we can build in those contingencies.
Jane, remind me, this is the report on the end of the year
Correct.
for 2011-12.
Yes.
Our new cycle starts, so talk to us a little bit about what the board will see in August.
Okay, in August, the board's going to see the budget for the fiscal year 13, which begins July 1st. We're already into it. July 1st through June 30, 2013. You're going to see very similar documents to what you see here, but it's going to be the new budget compared to this past year's actual.
Actual spends.
So you'll see, you know, for next year, what are we looking at budget compared to what we did last year, both revenues and expenditure side. You'll see all that in the August 14th committee of the whole meeting. I'll have a nice PowerPoint for you and show you those numbers. So it's going to be similar reports, but you're going to see from year to year then. Where here you're just seeing 1 year actuals to budget. Next year you're going to see the actuals to the new budget to see maybe what's trending up or what changes are affecting.
So we do our tentative budget in August and then vote on the final budget in September.
Correct.
And I'll be putting that in our trustee board calendar month to month that I'm putting together for everybody, so.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you, Jane. We'll move on to discussion, and I think, Dr. Sophie, you've got a couple things for us.
Yes, I just have a couple items. At this time of the year, we all know that everybody is concerned and wants to hear about kindergarten registration. So as of this afternoon at about 2:16,
Approximately.
we have 4 kindergarten sections, and the numbers for those are 15, 15, 16, and 15. So we're very pleased with the numbers. One of our secretaries, Jean, has been calling and verifying with the residents, and so we're really getting to the point we're feeling confident in these numbers. We're also starting to see a steady stream of people coming in to register at this point too, so.
And we have enough room in those numbers, not too much, but enough that we can accommodate the late registrations. That's what it sounds like.
Do you know historically how many new kindergartens we get in the last month or so before school?
That's not.
Very few,
many.
right?
Not that many. So we're pretty close to where we would expect to be right about now. Okay.
And I hear the word stable a lot as far as enrollment, so.
Good.
In reviewing the other grade levels, we're very stable there also. No red flags at all at this point, so I'll keep you informed of that in August before school starts.
And Jean, just to be clear, we have 1 half-day of those 4 sections. What's the ratio between half-day and whole-day kindergarten?
You know, I don't know the answer to that.
Oh, I'm sorry. I apologize. Last I knew it was one half-day. That's what I believe to be the case. I apologize.
And I'm not sure which of those is a half-day section, but I know that the kids are very evenly spread still amongst.
It sounds like it. That's tricky. You know, that's tricky to not only get a nice even spread, but then accommodate the interests of the half-day, whole-day. So that worked out nicely this year.
Well, and I'm glad we're talking about the numbers because I've heard a rumor in the community that there were a huge, half-day something again. So I'm glad to hear that all is well and,
I need to emphasize 15.
15 is perfect.
Because sometimes that can be heard incorrectly too. So I think it's important to reassure our families that our class sizes are very stable and at good numbers. The next item is staffing for 2012-13. And Mary Jane is going to read through our personnel report. And we are going to be discussing a little bit more about data that will be shared with board members for personnel report starting in August.
Okay, so should we go ahead and talk about our new employees now, or when we get to the, okay.
Talk about them now, and then with personnel recommendations, it's...
Okay, so as we know, Nate and Shelley both stay very busy over the summer with this kind of thing, but both of our 7th grade language arts teachers have been hired for the fall, and those are Angela Ragna, who is an MA Step 1, who will be replacing Marcy Chesson, and Darcy Johnson who is an MA Step 3, who will be replacing Todd Battaglia. And they are being hired at those steps in the salary schedule. So Ms. Ragna's salary is $46,500, and Ms. Johnson's is $49,332.
Per contract.
Correct.
I've met with both of our new staff members. They're delightful, energetic, and do have experience. One of them was actually a teaching assistant in our building, and the other one did her student teaching in Lake Forest. And I really think that the kids will enjoy them. They were very big on teaching strategies for language arts, and we'll be excited for you to meet them.
You know, what we do sometimes is bring new, I'm sure we'll have probably some elementary new hires too, maybe to the August meeting, I think, for the community to see. We did have some new hires in the spring that we already knew about, I think, that were here for a meeting.
That's right.
But maybe there'll be, I think, probably a couple more. And I believe we're working on the middle school librarian probably too.
We are working on the library media specialist for the middle school. And I know that Nate and Joanne have done some interviews. We're reviewing resumes, and I have calls into the 2 universities in the state that offer the program. So hopefully we'll have some good news on that next month also.
Good.
Great. Anything else? Any other questions or discussion on that? All right, I think we can move on to action then. And our first action item is personnel recommendations. Could I have a motion that the Board of Education approves the personnel recommendations as per the attachment in our packets?
So moved.
Second.
Discussion on those. As we saw in our packet, the personnel recommendations for this month include acceptance of Mr. Todd Battaglia's resignation. He is a 7th grade language arts teacher. The employment of Ms. Ragna and Ms. Johnson as 7th grade language arts teachers. We just spoke about those. And 2 of our a special ed teacher, Mrs. Kathy Driver, and a special services assistant, Ms. Jan Holland, have announced their retirements, their intent to retire. So, any discussion on those?
Just an observation that we have 2 new language arts teachers at the same time in 7th grade, and I've heard some concern about that, and I'm wondering, have they met with Joanne and talked to her about curriculum, or is that, I see their effective date isn't until next month, so it's a little hard to expect them to start doing that, but Joanne might be a nice continuity for them.
Joanne does have some plans to meet with both teachers. We will be meeting with all of our new teachers on the new teacher day at the end of August. But I really don't think that's enough. We'll need to figure out a very cohesive, fluid plan. It's nice to have 2 at the same time because we can work with them as a group. But I know Joanne, and I think, Ann, you do some work with that too, with mentoring also.
On August 20th, yeah.
So,
I've already been planning that. And they have mentors who will help them assimilate.
so we will be working with that, and there has been some discussion on that already.
So,
Any other discussion or questions? Okay. Eric, could we have a roll call?
Mary Jane Brady?
Yes.
Eric Wagner, yes. Leanne Charlot?
Yes.
Susan Ryder?
yes?
Okay, the motion passes. Okay, our next action item is approval of depository banks. Could I have a motion for the Board of Education to approve the following depositories of district funds for the 2012-13 fiscal year? Northern Trust Bank, Lake Forest Bank and Trust, Illinois School District Liquid Asset Fund, and J.P. Morgan Chase Bank.
So moved.
In a second?
Second.
And how about discussion on that?
It's a little formality that we kind of need to do, and I will tell you that J.P. Morgan Chase is a new bank for us this year, so we spread the money around a little bit, use the banks for different purposes, but this is where all of your tax dollars are kept safely throughout the year.
Any questions? Okay. Eric, can we have a roll call?
Mary Jane Brady?
Yes?
Eric Wagner, yes. Leanne Charlot?
Yes.
Susan Ryder?
Yes.
Good. Motion passes. All right, and then the consent agenda. Could I have a motion to approve the following items on the consent agenda? Regular meeting minutes from June 26, 2012, special meeting minutes from July 17, 2012, destruction of closed session tapes for January 25, 2011, the PC card report, bills payable, treasurer's report, activity reports. I have a motion?
So moved.
Okay, and a second?
Second.
Discussion on those. I think the one thing that we talked about is maybe making an explanation about what the consent agenda is and how we put several of these items to be paid in one motion. So we're going to work a little bit on the wording of those motions to make it clearer that these are recurring bills that we see each month, and we're just taking care of them all in one motion. So that'll be kind of a new thing for us going forward, a little bit different way to explain it, not a different way of processing it, just a different way of explaining it.
Before you take your vote rather than afterwards.
So, any questions or discussions on any of the items? Okay. Eric, can we have a roll call?
Mary Jane Brady?
Yes?
Eric Wagner, yes. Leanne Charlo?
Yes.
Susan Ryder?
Yes.
Okay. Motion carries.
New business. The only new business I wanted to remind everybody about is it appears that the strategic planner that Mary Jane and I met with is able to come to the committee of the whole meeting in August. So I was excited about that, and he'll make a presentation to the board. We can make a decision on that and start on our strategic planning cycle. We have a lot of work to do on that this year, so that's very exciting.
Great. Any other new business?
Can I ask a question about that? So we have one firm that you've spoken with, and then will be comparing them with another firm to get an idea of what?
We could easily do that. They're not necessarily done by firms. Many consultants specialize in strategic planning. The strategic planning firm that we have met up with is through Ben Martindale, our interim superintendent. They have a very, very good reputation in the area, and he has emailed, I don't know if he emailed you this, 5 or 6 different school districts, and I've contacted the superintendents to justify the cost and see what they've done in their district, and they've all been very happy. The procedure that they go through is very similar in many consultants and many firms, but I know that their facilitation and their work back to us through the process is speedy and fast. And I think that's important. That's what I've heard the board say is very important, so we can get on our cycle, set our goals, and determine our measures for monitoring and get moving. So I could easily get some quotes from other consultants, but this is a firm that I feel very good about, and I know we got the name from Ben in talking to him.
I haven't been through a strategic plan process with a school district before, so I don't really know, I don't have a sense of how involved it is or kind of what cost we're looking at. If the cost is significant, it seems to me like maybe we should be interviewing more than one person about it, even though I understand we have really good recommendations about this.
Let me find out. A lot of the strategic planning also is based upon the services they provide.
Right.
For instance, when I went through strategic planning before, I did the majority of the work, and then a facilitator came in simply to facilitate. It took a lot longer.
Right.
Because we had somebody, I was doing the work during the day along with my other superintendent duties. In my district before that, we had planners come in for strategic planning, and again, it was very similar to this model that you're going to be seeing in August. I think it would probably be a good idea if I got some costs. So Mary Jane and I can work on that a little bit, because we did meet with the other company. So I'll get some names of other people. If anything, it will just be a reassurance to all of you that it's right in the ballpark of what other districts are doing. And communities. Because they not only do school districts, they do park districts and some other community entities.
Well, one of the nice things about this group too is there really is a cafeteria option, so we can choose, do we want them to do some of our data management, how much of what do we want them to do? So that,
That's a
I think,
good
will be a
point,
nice
too.
option for us too, that we really can set a limit on what we want done and how much we want to pay for it through this particular, but it would definitely be a good idea, I think, for us to see what some of the others offer.
And I think it's exciting. I can't wait for us to get started on it, so.
It was
that's great.
exciting talking to this
Yeah.
man too, I mean, who does it all the time, and it was really fun to hear the things that you can do, and the data management was really interesting.
I forgot they have the cafeteria style, and that is so beneficial as board members and as a superintendent, because we'll all see what our priorities are together as a group. Some of the things we could do very simply here, other things it would be more timely to maybe have them do. But I was very impressed and excited. So, that we'll start that in August.
I think it'd be fun for everybody to hear from them, so. Great, any other new business?
That's it for new business, and I don't have old business because I'm new.
Does anybody else have any old business?
No.
I couldn't think of any either, so. I think we could entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved?
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, this meeting is adjourned.